Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm Dean Richmond, and this is Joe Jurec from CultureShoc. And today we're going to be talking about empowering business growth and culture transformation. Joe is our featured speaker today, and I'm your host. So just before we get started, a couple ins and outs. We have a Q&A button on your Zoom. Go ahead and ask any questions along the way in there, and we will answer them at the end. We are going to have a poll, a couple of them throughout the presentation. So we want you to answer those things, and we're going to incorporate some of that in the discussion as we do want to make this interactive. But let's go ahead and get started. You ready to go, Joe?
All right, let's go.
All right. So first question, man, let's just hear a little bit about CultureShoc, who you are, and what you're all about.
Sure. And I see some familiar names in the participants who joined so far. So, hey, everybody. Dean, thank you, first off, and thank you, folks, for hopping on the webinar today. CultureShoc, as some of you may know, and some of you may not yet, we've been around for about 8 years, started in 2014, and we're based here in Westlake, Ohio. And a lot of our clients, though, well, a good chunk are based in the Midwest or in the states surrounding Ohio. We've had over 300 clients around the entire US, making a direct impact on over 30,000 leaders. And when I say direct impact, I mean we've actually interacted directly with and had a positive impact on those leaders. So if you talk about the true impact of our speaking engagements and workshops and programs and things like that, it's probably more realistically in the 300,000 range, because each of those leaders has direct reports or folks that they cascade information back to.
Very, very cool. So there are a lot of different consultants out there. I guess the first question I've got for you is, what makes CultureShoc unique?
So our whole mission is discover, engage, and grow leaders. And the three uniques about CultureShoc, and this holds true for each of our different programs, first of which is entrepreneurial mindset. Every single member of this team has lived it. We've all started something or built something from the ground up on our own. We're not professors who are talking about theory or things that can't be put into practice in a real world setting. So we continue to learn from our clients who we're working alongside in their businesses and just adapting as the world around us evolves. We stick with it. When we say we're masters of engagement, what we mean by that is that we're meant to serve you, not necessarily to please you. And we understand the importance of healthy conflict and know how and when to bring that out in a group. So we are always focused on helping clients improve the engagement in their organizations, but in any of our workshop settings, we're also very focused on making sure everyone is truly engaged and that they're getting meaning out of what we're doing. The other thing that is really unique to us is results or nothing guarantee. We don't operate on contracts. It's a session-day pricing model. If we're not giving value, we don't want to work together. You can cancel anytime because it isn't a commitment-based program with any of the services that we offer. And if at the end of any of our sessions you don't see value, don't pay us. It's as simple as that.
Love it. That's a guarantee. So you look up at your logo and you got a buffalo. And I have to ask, can you share the story of why the buffalo? You guys are not in Buffalo. You guys are in, your guys are in Ohio. So tell us a little bit about that buffalo.
Pretty close to Cleveland. So the buffalo, when you see ITS or into the storm, it's this mentality that we have, because when a storm rolls across the country, buffalo will actually turn towards it and charge through it, knowing that they'll get to sunny skies faster. When that same storm rolls through, cows will turn away and try to outrun it. You probably guess they never do successfully. It prolongs their time and pain. And we can take that mentality or that methodology and apply it to so many things that we encounter day in, day out, both personally, professionally. There's so many different times that we reach these crossroads, that there's a path that is seemingly more difficult. It's uncomfortable. We know that it might be downright painful at first, but that if we charge into it, we're going to get a better outcome quicker. More times than not, however, we take the seemingly easy path, the one that is just more comfortable, less conflict, less friction. Unfortunately, when we take that path, the issues often circle back around and are bigger. We ultimately have to deal with them anyway. And a quick and easy example of a storm that somebody might face is having an accountability conversation with somebody, one of their direct reports or peers, or moving on from a toxic top performer that is having a negative impact on the rest of your team, but you keep them around because they get results.
Right. That's awesome. You and I spoke before. Buffalo, definitely one of my favorite symbols, animals, and you just made me love it all the more. Awesome. Now, when you're telling me about CultureShoc, you're telling me the story of the three-legged stool and really what set CultureShoc apart. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, I'd love to. And you see it on the screen where there's kind of three components, or the three different legs are EOS, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System, Kolbe, cognitive assessments, not cognitive. It's not a typo. It's the part of your mind that is how you take action. And ITS, or Into the Storm, leadership development. The reason we look at these as kind of a complete solution for organizations is that regardless which stage in the growth cycle your company is, either one or all three of these can be of major benefit. Entrepreneurial Operating System is for organizations primarily under 250 employees, where it helps you gain clarity around your vision and get traction in a healthy manner. What we realize, because some of our team are implementers for EOS and have been for quite some time, is that there's some natural gaps that form as the company does successfully scale and grow when it comes to the second and third layers of leadership being aligned with that vision and being able to execute against where the executives want to take the organization. That's where ITS, or Into the Storm leadership program, came from. Kolbe comes in at all different phases. And a lot of folks that I talked to, I know prior to my understanding of Kolbe, I was not only somebody who taught some of the other affective behavioral assessment sort of things that are out there, like Myers-Briggs and DISC and predictive index. But Kolbe is really unique because as not only a hiring tool to help you place folks in roles that align with their instinctive strengths, the things that bring them energy instead of stress. It's great for that at the beginning of somebody's journey with your company, but also throughout, so that way they can better understand their teams and put together committees, task forces, and projects that really leverage people's natural ability in a way that can, give your company a superpower.
Awesome. So now let's talk about, candidacy and kind of what you guys are doing. The whole world changed with COVID, and companies are looking at ways their company is structured. Are you remote? Are you hybrid? Are you in office? And really looking at the well-being of their employees and how to not only remain top performers, but also thrive in their lives. So take me through a little bit, really what you're doing on that end.
Yeah, and it's about time that a lot of companies realize the importance of focusing on well-being and just the livelihood of their teams. I think it's one of the good things that came out of this weird world post 2020. We actually just completed a consulting project with an organization who we've partnered with for years now. And this was something I wanted to share with anyone who joined this, and because there's quite a few different levers that can be pulled. And we could talk about each of these in a much longer format. So at the end of this, I am going to put up a poll question because I want to know what appeals to you most. But some of the things that we're seeing a lot of our clients focus on right now to improve this, first of which is increasing pay of veteran staff. And this one shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but as the market for hiring changes, if you're bringing people in at a much higher rate than your existing staff is at, right sizing some of that payroll can be crucial to retaining some of your quality employees, because the reality is they can probably go elsewhere and make more money. Another of which is this shared ownership model. And 3 of our clients just this year, if not more, have gone to this ESOP, or employee stock ownership, or employee shared ownership program. There's more skin in the game that way. And it's not just executive teams, but where every member of an organization has some sort of equity or buy-in to decisions that are made. It's improving retention, it's improving the productivity and just the effectiveness at all levels of an organization. And it's at the forefront right now. There's a lot of talk about it, and some organizations are just ahead of the curve, but it's absolutely improving the well-being, because people just care more. They're much more engaged because they feel like they're rewarded and treated as a member of ownership. I touched on this one a little bit with Colby, but there's a few different ways to go about it. And you can ensure better well-being and just quality of life at work when people are in roles that align with their strengths. There's this exercise that we'll do where we'll have somebody write their first and last name with their dominant hand. And then we'll have them switch hands and write their first and last name with the other one. And they can still write it, but it takes them longer. It's awkward. And the result still kind of sucks. And that same thought can be applied to when you're in a job that doesn't align with your natural way of doing things. So aligning and not only delegating responsibilities to people based on things that you don't want to do, but things that maybe are going to line up with their instinctive strengths more, that they'll get satisfaction out of and put more into it. Whereas for you, it could just cause stress. So being aware of that and doing placement based on it. Something that we've done for quite a while, and I know a few folks who are on this webinar right now have partnered with us on some intentional team building activities. And I'm not just talking about going out for dinner one night and or having a happy hour. And that stuff's great because it allows you an opportunity to build trust and to network more effectively. But we believe wholeheartedly, trust really doesn't have much to do with the amount of time that you've known somebody. It's much more about the opportunities to show vulnerability and to be intentional about building that trust. And by having some team building events that are facilitated in a way to draw parallels from the activity you're doing to the obstacles or things that you encounter on a day-to-day basis at work, has proven time and time again to be really valuable. Something that has been kind of a buzzword for a while, but not been fully woven into a lot of organizations yet, is gamification of not only learning, and I got a little excited about this one, Dean and Skip, so you can throw another bullet up there too, but gamification of not only learning, but also performance. Where I've seen some organizations that we've worked with now where they have kind of an intranet with a leaderboard. And it's not just based on the results that a sales team is getting, but it's often based on behaviors that leadership sees people doing, where they can award people points, or they'll get points for seeking out different courses and learning that is not required for compliance or just mandatory. But it creates this culture of continual learning, and also gives kind of that dopamine rush to see your name at the top of a leaderboard for doing things that help model the cultural values of an organization. I had virtual culture there as well. And that's really trying to bridge the gap between office and field, because it exists in every organization I've been a part of and every client that I work with. There's naturally always some divide, because it's much easier to have a consistent culture in a dedicated space than it is with a largely remote workforce. But there are ways to bring that remote or field culture closer to center. And some of it is even just, whether it be a care package or a home office stipend or, things like that we've seen a lot of clients doing. And the last, but certainly not least, and where I want to talk a lot about this throughout the rest of the webinar, is the importance of leadership development on the engagement and well-being of your team, because we've all heard it 100 times, but people leave people, not companies. And we believe that leadership development can't be a one-time event. It has to be a program. It has to be consistent, because I think we've all probably had moments of clarity or an aha realization where we're like, I get it now. And then life happens and we get back into the flow of things. And it's really easy to not have a lot of these principles or things that we know are important to us to model at the top of our minds. So ongoing leadership development. And I want to pause for a second here, because I know I spent a lot of time on this slide. Like I said, each of these are meaty enough to probably have some follow-up conversation about them, but to help inform us with some future content that we put out and even webinars, we're going to throw up a poll real quick, because I'd like to know which of these is most intriguing to the folks who we have on this line, so that way, again, that'll better inform some of the future content that we put out there. So take just a few seconds and go ahead and answer that poll for us, please.
All right, while they're doing that, great that we're even thinking about this. As a company struggles with how to go forward in this new world and how to reinvent process. CultureShoc can obviously help in a lot of areas, but let's talk about, I guess next is, what sort of candidates most often would use a service like CultureShoc in their process.
Yeah, certainly. And it looks like, based on the results, we've got the right sort of folks who joined this webinar today, because the majority said leadership development. That's where we'll spend a lot of our time for the rest of this, with strength-based hiring coming in second. So those are both right in our wheelhouse. The organizations we find ourselves benefiting from partnership with CultureShoc most often are going through change. They're either preparing for or experiencing growth and scaling their business, trying to make sure that they maintain what made them who they are when they're 10xing the staff that they have. Growing from a small to a large business and going through no man's land is this term that we call it, where when they're kind of right in the middle and they're on the precipice of turning into something that is either a national or global sort of business. And we help them navigate through that, so that way they can scale successfully and hold true to their culture and their vision. The others, and this is persistent with many that we've worked with this past year, especially, is just going through transformational change, like acquisitions, mergers, reorgs, where a lot of folks are trying to do more with less resources, and rightfully so. There's this one. Actually, I'm doing a conference at the beginning of next year with Liz Weissman around multipliers, which talks about how the overwhelming majority of employees in the US utilize less than 50% of their intelligence and capability. And if we can tap into that and align people with roles that bring them natural energy, you can do a lot more with a lot less. And we're not just talking about working them more hours or things like that, but just aligning their responsibilities with things that they want to put more into. And then, even if your company is not going through major change and they're not yet growing, or maybe they've already grown, but they're in a competitive landscape and they just want to strengthen their competitive advantage and differentiate their culture from a competitor so that that way they attract and retain higher talent. Those are all companies or different phases that companies would be at that aligns really nicely with one or all the services that we have at CultureShoc.
Yeah. I was thinking while you were talking, it could be new ownership, it could be a new leadership team, but it could also just be, hey, let's shake it up a little bit. Programs like this can be a catalyst for change inside and your company, your division, and really get things going and get your whole team going in the same direction.
Yeah, it helps break down the silos where a lot of times organizations will start to have their own unique identity in each business unit or function instead of rowing together with true clarity and alignment around a vision. So yeah, at any phase, there's value, but those are the times that we see it most often, that folks are starting to seek it out when they realize and have that aha moment that that they could strengthen some things with partnership.
So these are the candidates. Let's talk about some of the most common issues that you see when putting this program on for a company.
Yeah, so it does kind of differ depending on the growth stage. I'll tell you that companies under 250, that lack of clarity and focus, if you're focused on too many things, you're not focused on any of it. So lots of great ideas without real clear execution. And when a company goes from say 10 or 20 to 100, 150 people, there's a lot of issues with delegation and costly mistakes due to improper delegation or insufficient training, usually a combination of the two, where that second or third layer haven't necessarily built up the credibility and trust with the executives. And the executives are either delegating and not following through, or afraid to let go of the vine and holding it all themselves and just, burning out because they're not delegating with confidence to their people. Companies over 250, the issues that we're helping them solve for their employees are really around engagement, around creating a workplace experience and culture that they're going to be proud to be a part of, that they're going to actively recruit others and be raving fans of the organization that they are a part of. So we've just seen complacency run amok in a lot of different places, largely due to the leaders in place not being fully aware of the impact that they're having on folks. So for those larger companies, it's just lack of sustainability and readiness for continued growth, and then having that tough look inward to say, we're losing some of our best people, and in this new environment, it is more difficult than we've ever experienced attracting new talent because it's a really competitive landscape.
Awesome. Now, you and I spoke as we were creating the deck, based upon the registrants that we were seeing pop in. You wanted to focus really on the first and the second layer leaders. Can you kind of take us through a little bit as far as how you at CultureShoc do your needs assessment?
Yeah, so when there is interest to have a conversation, being that we operate on EOS, we are all about meeting effectiveness. We don't want to waste anyone's time, and we don't want to waste our own, right? So we are always pretty disciplined about doing a charge meeting or getting the right stakeholders together to say, what do you have in place currently? Help us understand that, and are you interested in leveling it up? What are the issues, not even specific to just training or to your second and third layer, but what are the issues keeping you up at night? So that way we know that, and that'll inform our approach should we work together on things. talk to us a little bit about your current bench strength. If you needed to step back tomorrow, do you feel confident being able, with the folks you have, stepping up and being capable of carrying the organization into the future? And then doing ratings. And this is something that we also do inside the program itself, not just during the fit assessment, around 5 things. And we'll typically have any of the stakeholders involved say, give me a rating on the current level of organizational trust, the level of healthy conflict that you are having, the commitment that you have at your organization, the accountability, and the results. And what's funny is a lot of times results comes in highest out of those things. And your results can still be pretty good if there's issues or cracks in the foundation of those other things. And this is homage to Patrick Lencioni and 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which we take some of those principles and we'll open up that conversation and say, what's meaningful or relevant to you? But even if those results are rated highest, they'll never be as high as they could be if the trust and conflict, commitment, and accountability aren't where they should be. So that'll inform us not only as a starting point prior to any of the work that we're doing together, but also allows us to then, make a recommendation for if our program is going to be a good fit for them, because quite frankly, it's not all about just technical leadership skills. It is much more about mindset and principles that are vital to being an effective leader.
Awesome. So now we get to the part of the program, that we're going to ask a little bit more about the nuts and bolts. But before we get there, why would a company choose CultureShoc rather than just doing it themselves?
And I think a lot of folks realize this if they truly stop and think about it, but there's always that desire to build things out in-house. The reality is that when you have an outside partner that you trust and that is objective, they can bring some things out that a member of the internal team wouldn't be able to. Not only that, but it's seen as something special. It means more to employees and they take it more seriously when you have a program like this in place that everyone isn't exposed to by your internal training team. So what we've seen and heard from clients that we've worked with is that having the It's Leaders program in place demonstrated their commitment to the ongoing development and growth of their people, that it has helped them have a stickiness factor where they retain some of that top talent, but they also draw in others because this could be a differentiator. So both the results achieved by having something like this in place and simply having it in place in the first place helps differentiate your workplace from the competition in a time that attracting and retaining talent is quite difficult. I am curious though, from the folks who we have on here, because I'm not saying it is the magic bullet or the only part of the equation that is necessary. I think that there's different ways to go about things, but I'm always curious when I'm talking with clients of what they do currently have in place. So I'm going to throw up one more quick poll here, because for the organization that you represent or are a part of, from general curiosity, but also to inform if we have future conversations together, I'd just like to know, is your existing leadership development practices, are they primarily job of management, some sort of combination? You see the poll. I don't need to read through all of them for you.
So we'll take a moment there. If you could please vote quickly. Did you want to speak to the results or just move next?
I mean, it's kind of in line with what I would have expected. I mean, there's generally a mix, right? Outside partners coming in a little lower than the other means is pretty common. Primarily the job of management. I've been a part of that where I was one of those managers that realized the importance of it and took that on myself. But at different growth stages, I've seen different things in place. So
Oops. So obviously, when you invest in a program, any company wants results. So how do you measure results for a program like this?
Yeah, and it's funny. I've worked in adult learning and leadership development well beyond my time at CultureShoc, and it's always a tad tricky to correlate the two, but it's how our brains work and how every good business should. You're looking at return on investment. Well, there's a few things that we incorporate so that way you can tie it to direct results. First of which is those day one ratings versus the end of each phase. I mentioned that we do that during the fit assessment. We also do it on day one of the program. So when we do identify, these are the 8 to 12 folks that are going to be a part of this ITS leadership group. On day one, we'll have them do those ratings for their company, and then we'll look at it 5 sessions later to see, has there been improvement there? At the end of each phase, because there's 2 phases of the program, there's a capstone presentation so that way every participant can share what they've learned, but also how they've put it into action, the results that they've gotten in their work since the beginning of that phase. And we'll often invite members of the executive team to that capstone presentation so that way they can see the retention of learning for themselves. What you should see in your people, if it is you're the direct supervisor of somebody that you send into one of these programs, is a higher level of cross-functional trust and camaraderie from that group, so that way they know who to reach across the aisle to get stuff done. They start to have more of an ownership mindset, that instead of just saying, here's the problem, they're proposing solutions and thinking like an owner would. They're gaining exposure to the other business units and just gaining a better understanding of the big picture business. Of course, retention and attraction of top talent, and then just better alignment around an execution of vision and core values. Because especially if a company that we're working with on the ITS program is also EOS client of ours, we'll get very intimate with them around these are your company's 7-year, 3-year, 1-year goal, or just their vision and things like that, so that way we can reinforce what the executive leadership team is talking about in their meetings.
All right. So, very related as far as success in a program like this. You've got the measure. So how do you determine that this program was a success for said company?
What we see as being an obstacle, whether a company's doing it themselves, whether they have a partnership, some sort of a hybrid approach, when there's not the capacity for follow through. And this is something I lived intimately when I was a part of 2 much larger organizations, is that there was a training function where there was a lot of good content that people were exposed to, but that team had many other responsibilities. They wore a ton of hats and did not have the bandwidth to follow through in a way that would actually ensure application of learning. So lots of great ideas, no follow through. When we have executive teams who don't reinforce or model the principles being learned, it can create a lack of trust. This is whether it's internal or external that you have any sort of facilitated leadership development, is if you're going over things about these are the behaviors that you need to see in leaders to effectively run a business. And then those they're not consistent with that next layer up. So that's something we make a big point to do, is be very transparent and encourage coming out of each one of these sessions that you have some sort of a debrief or recap with your leadership team to say, hey, here's what I got out of this. Here's what you can expect from me. And also here's what I need from you. We also put together this passport program that has very tangible commitments that people do after and between each session that we want them to share with not only the accountability partner we determine in the session, but with their leader, so that way, again, it's just fully transparent. And then programs focus solely on technical skills and abilities are an obstacle I know that I was exposed to earlier in my career when I was going through some leadership development. Look, things like finance and systems and other technical skills, they're important. But if your leadership development plan and program is focused in a large part on those things without some of the more principle-driven mindset with real-world application, that's going to be a pretty large determining factor on if you are hitting success or hitting failure with your investment of development.
Very good. I think we've done a good job of talking about why a company would use a program like this, how to measure it, and what success looks like. I think now it's time to get into the actual nuts and bolts. We've been in the clouds a little bit. Now let's get into the details behind the program itself and really what a client would see when they join the CultureShoc program.
Sure. And to the folks who've stuck it out this long and are seeing some value in this, I will tell you, I'm going to take you through our primary core program and then also announce a new service offering that we have that we've actually opened up a wait list or registration for the first couple sessions on too. So our core program, first off, I mentioned everything we do is about practical application and commitment to implemented change behavior. Our focus is on mindset. It is a combination of instructor-led presentations, small team exercises, group discussions, and then participant presentations as well. With each session, we're going to introduce some principles or concepts that have inspired us throughout our career and that has helped others that we've worked with, and then get each participant to identify what's most relevant and meaningful to them so that way they capture what they can take from that. We don't pretend to be experts in things that we're not, but what we do know is facilitating group transformation of mindset and getting people to do something with what they learn. So at the end of each session, we assign accountability partners so that way there's something they're committed to doing and somebody holds them accountable to it between then and when we meet next. We do these either in person or virtual. A lot of times we'll do it at our offices in Westlake because we have the Traction Leadership Center, or at an offsite location near our clients' offices. We just want to get them out of the space that they work in on a day-to-day basis. With that, the program is typically 8 to 12 people in each group, and there's a lot of logic behind the group size, sticking at 12 or below to get maximum effectiveness out of the program. And then there's 10 sessions that are really calendared to meet the needs of your business, because we know there's value in getting a cross-functional group in there, but that's not always the easiest thing to calendar. So we've had some folks go through the entire thing in as quickly as just a few weeks if they really want to pull them together to do almost a retreat style few weeks to get through each phase. And we've also had some where they do it a 2-day kickoff and 1 session per month. As long as you get through each phase of the program within a calendar year, we do feel like there is effectiveness, and our clients have given us that confidence. I'd like to expand it a little bit though. So, and give you an idea of what's in the curriculum of this 10-day program. It's broken into 2 phases, as I mentioned, the first of which is foundational skills. And this is more of an eye chart. I'm going to send this out to everybody after the webinar. So you'll get an email from us that have a few different resources. You can see the recording of this, but you'll also be able to look back at what the curriculum is. You can also find it on our website. But in the first phase, what I want to hit on is just each of those sessions are a full day. It starts with establish authentic trust, hopefully for obvious reasons by this point. I feel like that's the foundation. We go into real simple communication, positive accountability. A lot of times it is perceived as a negative thing, and that shouldn't be the case. The power of delegation, and then crush complacency, maximize engagement. To give you an idea, I'll expand further on just one of these. When we do that first day kickoff, establish authentic trust. Prior to the session, we will have everybody take a Kolbe cognitive assessment so that way we can review in the session how to understand your own instinctive strengths, and then how to understand your teams as well. We'll go through that 5 dysfunctions of a team trust pyramid, talk about the importance of the different levels of it, from trust, conflict, commitment, accountability to results, do the ratings that I mentioned that give us kind of that barometer or starting point. We'll talk about the team's unique strengths or synergy and how they would complete projects together, but also how to apply that thinking to other things they do. We have something called the 5 Bs of trust, which are some specific actions that you can take to be more deliberate and intentional about building trust with those personally and professionally, but for the nature of the day, more professionally, like which relationships are too important to wait or to let trust come to you. We'll go into goal and commitment setting. And at the very end of the day, to go alongside with goal and commitment setting is when we introduce that passport to say, what is that clear, tangible action or commitment that you're going to take between sessions as it pertains to forming stronger relationships with your team. So I wanted to at least touch on what one day looks like to give you a better idea. And I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but it's a mix of some different principles, of some different group discussions and exercises. There's a playbook for every single one of the sessions so that way people are capturing throughout. And it's always framing things as, here's this idea, here's this thought. How is that most relevant to you? What can you actually take with and do something with it?
All right, very good, very good. What about the second phase?
So mastery, and this is most of the clients that we work with do go through both phases, but it is optional. They're all there is a building block nature to the entire program. Mastery is more executive level readiness. So talking more about the legacy that you're going to leave, doing a lot more self-reflection, and sharpening your awareness. So I won't get into the same level of detail there, but I think it is important to know that it doesn't end with foundational. There is the option to continue leveling up your team, because you shouldn't be the same once you come out the other end of the storm, right? And with this program, if you've gone from foundational, which are just some of the true fundamental leadership skills, and gotten all the way through mastery, you should be pretty dangerous in the organization. And it is something, like I said, we're focused on transformation of mindset. Going through an entire program like this, it does arm people with some tools to make a pretty darn big impact. And we've got a cohort of folks that are going through it together, that they can really get some stuff done when it comes to scaling or navigating the organization through change.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think we've reached that time in the program where we ask you if you have some questions around the program. So feel free to type in that Q&A area. Again, I'm going to remind everyone that a copy of this presentation, a video of what you saw today will be available and sent out to really everybody that signed up for today. That way you can share it with your team. And I want to again thank Joe for doing this with me. So let's see what we have in the Q&A. I'm going to turn my video off and just get in there, see what we have in there in the Q&A.
Something that I do have come up pretty often is just like, how much does this cost? I'll tell you that we made sure the pricing is affordable enough for small companies, but that it's scalable enough for larger organizations. So
cost is always a top one
for come up.
Any program, right?
Yep.
And I think it's pretty clear on how long it takes. What about scheduling the program? How far out do you typically have to, if a company has said they want to do this, what sort of window is this? 3 months out? Is it 6 months out? What sort of scheduling would they be expecting?
It's really dependent on how quickly you can identify the folks that you'd like to have in the cohort, and that they can then take the Colby cognitive assessments, which they only take about 20 minutes per person to complete. And then just based on our calendars here, we do have a team of facilitators, so it's not just myself. And typically within 30 days, we can stand up a program. From there, we have a lot of folks that are inclined to kind of kick things off with a bang and do a 2-day kickoff, or sometimes even having a more immersive experience where at the end of day one, they'll do some sort of team building or team strengthening activity in the evening before they go into that real simple communication session on day 2. But yeah, generally within 30 to 60 days is from decision time to when we actually kick off that session.
Okay. And do you ever do more one-on-one coaching? Let's say the whole company isn't really signed up to do this. Would you have a similar sort of effective training that you could handle with individuals with a company, or is this just a team sort of thing?
Yeah, we're starting to realize that there is some demand for that as well. And while we do believe with good reason, we've seen it, that there's value in assembling a cross-functional team, we know that's not realistic for every organization where they might not have 8 to 12 people to go through the program. So there's a few things in place. First off, our entire team at CultureShoc does one-on-one coaching, whether it be executive level, high-performing individual contributor, or an emerging leader, a next-gen executive. But the other thing that we've started to recently put together is a forum. So an It's Leadership forum, where essentially if you have 1, 2 members of your team that you'd like to expose some of this stuff, but you don't want to wait to get a larger group together, where we do put people together from different organizations. So I'm going to, there's 2 things that I'll share here. There's a link to a free assessment for anybody who joined this webinar today, for you to just see, like, is your team charging into the storm? And then the second of which is, if you do have interest in either the program or in only 1 or 2 folks getting exposed to some of this content, there's a link to join a wait list or to pre-register for when we do start filling some of these It's Leadership forums with a group of people from different organizations. So there are some solutions in place for that.
Great. And what if you don't want to take the full curriculum, you want to take 1 or 2 sessions? Can you do kind of a mix and match of things?
We do 1-day workshops with organizations all the time, where, say it is a much larger group. For instance, we were just working with a local financial institution where they're like, we're really having some opportunities around accountability. And we did take our full positive accountability session and then kind of trim it down to a format for a larger audience in a half-day format. So sure, there's absolutely different ways to get a bite-sized piece of the program. And a lot of times that's kind of what you need to see to test us out. So we encourage people, like I said, there's no commitment, there's no contract. You can always start the program and decide it's not for you, because you're not locked into anything. But a lot of times folks will ask us to either do a month of one-on-one coaching, do a 1-day workshop or a team building activity, or even, I think with this new leadership forum, that'll be a great way for you to have 1 or 2 people in the program. And when you see the value of it, then you can put together a full cohort of folks. And with all that stuff, you don't see value, don't pay us at the end of it. I do want to encourage everybody on the webinar though. Like, look, we'd love to work together on things, but we mean it when we say, if it's not a fit or if we don't feel like we're going to provide value, that we wouldn't want to, right? For your time, for your money, and for our own. I would encourage you though, take a look at your own programs and what you have in place, and do compare it against kind of the structure of what we've done here, because we've seen a lot of internal L&D teams will miss the mark a little bit. There are some crucial elements when it comes to trust and conflict in particular, that time and time again, we just realize that people express those are areas of deficiency, or those are things that they expect to just come to them without applying any sort of focus and intensity around them. So, we'd love to be advisors, to be good partners, but if nothing else, at very least look internally to see if there's anything that you got from this that you can apply to strengthen your own programs.
Great. So we've reached that time, and I think there's a few leave behinds that you wanted to make sure that everybody knew about how they would get started, and what sort of tools you have available for them.
Certainly, and I referenced these, Dean, but in the email that you'll get as a follow-up, I guess first off, for everybody who stayed through, I am going to send you a thanks a latte as well. You'll get a copy for today, but you'll also get a copy or a link to take a free web assessment that I mentioned. And then if you flip over to the next one, Dean, there will also be an option if you want to be notified when we do kick off the leadership forum for one or two folks from your team. You'll have an option to move forward with either one of those. And then of course, if you want to keep it less formal, just reach out to us, just give us a call. My information will be in there. Some of you may know that our other team members, Pete is my colleague and partner on the Into the Storm side. We work really closely with Ron Kaminsky, Kimberly Dyer, Jim Tennant. So, we're all here to support you however we can. If you want to pick up the phone or shoot us an email and just have a conversation to see if there is something we can help with, we would love to.
Well, thank you very much, Joe. I definitely see the value when a company, and I've been at several, when they're going through a major change, a tool like this can make all the difference to get your group together, get them all going in the same direction, and really changing your company and the outcome in the way that you want it to go. So this is a great program, and I would definitely recommend it to any company that is going through a change or needs to go through a change.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So Dean, thank you very much, folks who joined today. I appreciate all of you, and I hope to have a follow-up conversation sometime in the near future.
All right. We look forward to the next webinar.